enjoyed these last 5-6 weeks on this topic of personal witness conversations. And what's really been exciting is to hear the little stories, either in the hallway or in here, of, where people are putting it into practice. So that's real encouraging. For anyone that's hasn't been here the last few weeks, there should be a PowerPoint set of slides. We're going to do the fifth P in our 5 Ps outline this morning. Catch up from not getting it done last week. But we had such good table time last week, I just couldn't shut that down because it was really great to hear the conversations going on. So we'll finish that, and then we'll spend some time that'll be helpful to me in terms of doing this class in the future, or anyone else that feels led in using this material to lead a group with this material or your own. We'll do some feedback of the surveys that I handed out last week. There should be copies on the table. Even if you weren't here, you can still fill out part of that survey, particularly the bottom part, which talks about where do we go from here? How do we keep it alive and well? Was this just a class and the notebook goes up on the shelf with the other 5 classes we've had in the past 10 years? Or is it something we just keep as a way of life? That's my hope and desire. So we also, primarily for Whitmer's benefit, we had some handouts here I'll get to you if you're interested in them. One was on verses about sharing and witnessing. So we have 2 pages of those, which kind of encourage and instruct us to be out there. We also have a sheet, it's called The Benefits of Following God's Word. And that sheet really gives us some talking points, if nothing else, when you're out and about. Did you know that if you follow God's Word, these things will happen in your life? And it's the things that people are seeking. And of course you have the PowerPoint slides there. And the other thing that we also handed out, seems like I have a lot of materials, but we have up here on this counter 7 different witnessing type materials, tracts, New Testaments, for you to look at and decide if one of those helps you or doesn't help you with your quest to go out and share the good news. So that's what those are there for. Okay? So, like last week, I'm going to start kind of at the bottom of the agenda that we had last week, and that was to share any activities you had this week or encounters as you were out about in the marketplace, where you maybe prayed for someone, got to share a Bible with someone, or just had a spiritual discussion or encounter. So I want to do that first because it's been a couple weeks we've got timed out and didn't get to share those. Daryl.
I had an interesting encounter at the Waterburger on 242. But the background for that, about a month or so back, I was there and had this election. This guy was kind of, evangelizing, and they're asking about you're saved and all that. And he clearly, outside of his comfort zone, but he was still making the effort.
Yeah.
Well, I was there yesterday at lunch, and he was in there. He came by and said, "I already talked to you, right?" I said, "Yeah." So he goes to the next guy over there, and the guy says, he approaches him, and he says, "No, I'm a Satanist."
Satanist.
And I thought, well, I like, and so he just kind of, there was a polite exchange. The guy was not obnoxious. He just said, "But thank you for asking," or whatever. And I was thinking about that. It's like, how do you address that? And then I was thinking about it. By the time I thought of anything, the guy had already left. But this guy that was the evangelizing there, I kind of walked over to him. There might have been an opportunity there. So maybe just ask him. And I'm interested what your thoughts are, because you probably run through the same thing. But it's like, would it be productive to say, tell me what you know about Satan, you know, and start having a conversation around that? If that would be productive, maybe not, but
Well, I don't know if you're asking me.
I am.
Anybody else in the room who wants to pipe up, but I've told the story. I met Lucifer at Walmart. Remember that story? He pulled out his card, and I was just real polite to him, but I didn't feel like there was any fallow ground there. There were others in the store that don't have Bibles and are willing to receive one. So that's not a good answer probably. I haven't really focused on it. What you would say to get them thinking.
You just wonder if there's a way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
Because you know that they're Satanists, they're already misguided, and they've already been fed a bunch of lies, basically. And then, of course, on the other hand, they're probably convinced they're right, so it might be a big brick wall there too. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
There's a book called Tactics by Koppel's the guy's name, and he talks about putting a stone in their shoe by asking questions. Oh, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? That kind of stuff. Not that you're trying to convince them otherwise. You're just asking questions that would make them think about what they just said.
Yeah.
So I think it's Ron Koppel, but it's called Tactics. So that's a.
One of the things that's going to come out later, I kind of realized in our materials, I don't really have a very crisp, clear section on what you'd call the come to a decision questions. And so those are some things that maybe you could go like feeding off what Jay ended up with, the certain, uncertain theme. We're certain. So you could just say, are you certain or uncertain of your eternal destination? Maybe that's something that starts rattling around in his mind. That may be the only thing you said to him. But there's probably a one-liner you could give him to make him start thinking. And I'll be praying for you. Anybody else have a interesting encounter this week? Larry?
Sometimes it's not as productive, but you get to still engage the person. We had, I now carried my little Bible in there for those opportunities. And one of them was just a person that came in that's been a client for a long time. And I just asked him if he had a Bible, and he said, yeah, I've got one. And we got to talking, and it turns out that he is a Christian. But until you carry on a conversation with somebody that you've known through your business, you don't know that.
Yep.
And then, I guess it was Friday evening, Martha and I went out with the Foxes, and we were at a restaurant in downtown Conroe, and the same guy came up to us that we'd seen, a month or so ago, Sean, and we'd asked a month or so ago if we could pray. We were about to say our prayer, and we asked if there was something we could pray for, and he told us about his 2 kids, and that he's separated from his wife and so forth. So I asked him Friday, I said, pulled out the Bible, said, hey, I give away free Bibles, the Bible routine. And he said, I've got one, my mother gave it to me. And we got to carry on a little bit of a conversation, but you could tell that she was a believer, and that had some impact on his life. And so we just carried on a little bit, not real long, but just a short conversation about his kids and what were their names and so forth.
Yeah, just keep it up.
When I've asked quite a few people if they hadn't needed a Bible, that I have Bibles I can get out. Most of them say, yes, I do, or sometimes their face will light up and say, yes, I do. Anyway, but I kind of wanted to follow up, and I thought, so one of my pickup delivery, that's my witness ground, sitting in my car. And so I asked the young lady, and she smiled and said, yes, I have 2 at home. I said, well, I hope you read them? And she said, yeah. So then I just asked, how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gives it a little more communication of this is real.
Yeah. That's what we're going to talk about today in our 5th P, which is the follow-up aspect of this. Any other stories to share?
I have kind of a convicting one. It wasn't necessarily me, but yesterday, I was running some errands and I stopped at Ace Hardware up here in Willis. Grabbed a couple of things. I come walking out, walking over to my vehicle, and I hear, "Young man, young man." So I looked over my shoulder, and there was a gentleman sitting in his car, and he's hollering at me. I'll take young man.
So it's somebody older.
It was somebody older, obviously. And I walked over to his car. I'm thinking, oh, what's this, you know? And I said, how you doing today, sir? And his first response was, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And then he was calling me over. He was giving me a hard time about something I bought. I bought some pre-mixed 2-cycle fuel. And he's an old logger, and he was giving me a hard time about buying that junk. But when he told me he's a follower of Jesus Christ, and I reached over and grabbed him on the shoulder in there and said, man, I am too, sir. And I think he was using that opportunity to give me a hard time to probably witness to me.
Yeah.
And then we just exchanged some, joking back and forth, and then he went on his way. But it kind of convicted me that I'd never start a conversation off that way. And he did. So.
Well, there's so few compliments thrown around these days. That'd be a good way to start a conversation.
That worked though, hey, old man.
So just
Probably shouldn't use "hey, beautiful," but
no. Yeah, she'll take care of that. That goes back to our testimony. That didn't work out too well for me years ago. Maybe I'm a follower of Jesus Christ should be a new introduction I should give people.
I have one short one. I was at Arby's, and there's a young man sitting in the dining area playing video game. I assume his parent was working. He was there after school, I assume. So I went over and said, do you have a Bible? And he says, no. Chatted with him a little bit. Showed him some of the references. Went back. I looked back over there, and I thought, well, he's gone to sleep. He literally had his head on the table. Well, then I saw he had it open down here. He was reading it. It was just a visual image of there's somebody that didn't have a Bible, and it's kind of cool to see him actually open it up and read it while you're there to see it. Because most of the time we don't get to see what happens. Okay, well, let's appreciate the testimonies, the sharing. Just keep your intentionality out in front of you. You know, some of the things that we've talked about, little tips to be ready over the last 5 weeks is, get you a personal witness testament or a tract, and keep it right with your cell phone when you walk around. Because there'll be opportunities every day, every time you go out, to give that away. Have some other friends in the Gideons, they keep that little table in their foyer by the front door. Every time a worker comes to work on something, that they keep a stack of witness testaments there to remind them that don't forget to talk to them about the Lord. And I've mentioned before, there's at least 3 examples in the last couple of months where servicemen were won to the Lord just because someone purposed to be ready. So that's another thing you can do. Some of you have started carrying them in your back pocket. We don't wear suit coats anymore. You can't put them in there. Back pocket. Keep several copies in your car console. That's when you turn off the key or whatever, grab your sunglasses. Oh, there it is. And like I mentioned before, I purpose to take one with me every time I go into the store. I still get up and leave without it. And I get halfway in, I go, oh, I forgot. I go back and get my Bible I want to give out. So it doesn't come naturally, and it takes a long time to get into practice. And sometimes, you know, like, if I go to Walmart and have time, I have a little, you know, belt pack thing. Because when I go into Walmart, I find so many people that don't have Bibles. I can't carry 2 or 3 in there. I'll have to go back to my car and get some more. There's that many people that don't have Bibles. So those are just some tips. Find one that you like to use, and I think you'll be blessed from it. So let's go to the PowerPoint slide before I talk any longer. So we're going to finish the 5th P in our 5P outline. It's on page 7. Again, we always start with prayer. We always want to prepare. Second P, we want to proceed out to the marketplace. The 4th thing is we want to proclaim something to someone. And lastly, this is kind of where I'm still growing a lot, and that is I'll hand out a Bible. I do have a contact card, which helps. I read that with people that I have a conversation with. But have I actually said, could I meet with you in a public place to go over the plan of salvation, or this or whatever the topic was? Create a bridge to continue the conversation. That's what we're going to talk about here on page 7. And these are just kind of some obvious things, the comments there on the top right. You know, depending on where your conversation has gone, you know, the Satanist example that was just brought up, the guy could say, I'm really interested in finding out why you're attracted to that. Could we go to lunch and you tell me about that? I mean, I'm just kind of making something up there, but that might be, he may want to do that, or he may, you know. So maybe just ask them if they want to continue the conversation. First stop point there. And, you know, it's best to set something up definitively. Can we meet at Denny's for breakfast at 7? And I'll buy you breakfast or whatever. And then 3rd, you know, consider appearances is always a good thing. You know, opposite sex things be seen out in public. You might want to take your daughter or your spouse or another person with you, or ask them to bring someone, just so there's 3 of you. If you're not comfortable doing that one-on-one somewhere. And then have a contact card that you could leave them. And you know, I've got an example of mine down below there, but you could make up your own. You know, take prayer requests. That's a form of follow-up. Because sometimes, like, you see them in the restaurant every 2 or 3 weeks, and you can follow up on those. Debbie goes to get her groceries. She's always looking for more shopping opportunities. So she can all right, and then be ready. You know, I mentioned some time back that we were doing the Catfish Festival Bible distribution last fall. We had a group of about 7 or 8 youth come by that we had given Bibles to earlier. They say, do you know where there's a Bible store? What? Well, all we knew was, here's some good churches that we know. You'll have to go check them out. We got to talking to ourselves about, we weren't very prepared for that question. So, you know, be ready to recommend a church, obviously ours, if they're close by. But, you know, we do stuff with the Gideons all around, so we recommend wherever they're nearby, good churches. Recommend it to your pastor. Pastor Dave here is probably one of the best at leading someone to the plan of salvation. he has it in his sermons all the time. It's just a wonderful outline. So anyways, any thoughts on that? This is kind of common sense, but it's one of the things we often neglect is there's someone without a Bible, they don't know even how to read the Bible, and we just left them with the Bible, and we didn't give them any instruction on what to do other than maybe sneak in the words. I would start with the book of John if I was a new Bible reader. Well, that helps. And they're adults and they can figure it out, but you know, I think there's fertile ground here at the follow-up phase. Any comments? Or you've seen follow-up? I mean, I kind of heard when you see someone the second, third time, that's part of the follow-up. How many have a contact card that you could give someone to call you, other than just maybe write something on a piece of paper? So I kind of challenge you to think about that. If you really want to make, witnessing outside your home and out in the public, maybe consider a contact card of some type. Okay? Now, you can all clap because we've finally finished 5 Ps. Yeah, I've said before, I've had to actually think about changing my orientation. Do I go to get coffee and look at my mail at Starbucks, or am I doing that plus taking my witness materials and the person sitting there alone that came there because they need some conversation? Is that our orientation? So and that period took over a year, so I don't expect everyone in here after 5 weeks to progress in your thinking through that.
I've only shared my testimony to people I know, personally. So on my feeble attempts to reach out with a Bible, I've not been in the situation to share a testimony.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, I just don't feel prepared, I think is it. I don't know. Haven't had to.
Yeah, I found that, like you, I don't have people just come right out and say, "Could you tell me your salvation testimony?"
I keep waiting for someone to come and ask you, "Hey, do you have a Bible?"
But what I have been able to do is, like I said, I meet a lot of young people, particularly young men. I'll make a comment about, when I was young, I got a lot of direction out of reading the Proverbs and other books in the Bible for how to live life. And that really interests them. That's a testimony. So it wasn't my salvation testimony, it was part of my testimony.
Well, kind of the way through the years I've self-learned, I guess, to talk to people is not to even refer anything about the Bible or anything in that light. It's just in a conversation where just talking about worldly things, and I get to have the opportunity to say I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, "Well, what do you mean?" Or somehow there's questions, and I can elaborate
Yeah.
as to things I used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had conversations where she'll kind of get on me like, "Well, I don't think that's funny." If I'm telling her a story about having a conversation with somebody, I'll make a comment about, we joked about, drinking or womanizing. And so I'm not making a joke out of it. It's just part of the conversation to where we can have a laugh, with the guy that still off doing all those things. And I can relate how I used to do that and give some examples of what I used to do, but I don't do that anymore, what God's done for me. And for me, I focus so much on just trying to just let my life be that testimony. And I get real convicted when I'm not living up to that. It's just the way I'm acting in a situation. And I want to try to focus on acting in a way that is proof of a changed life. And I've had just tons of opportunities where, just I'm walking around with the Starbucks tea when everybody else is walking around with that beer. And that spurs a lot of conversation to where I'm not just necessarily, hey, here's the Bible, but man, the Bible's taught me to not, be that alcoholic anymore. And through time, I've had just real good conversations where, in a work environment or a friendship environment, I'm not just so in somebody's face, but I've had guys come up to me later and express that they can relate to what I was sharing because they're struggling right now. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right on target.
Yeah, have you read Jay's book?
I'm not.
Yeah, that's his method too, relational. So, just right in line with that.
Whereas yesterday we were at Starbucks. Imagine Starbucks, I'm there every day.
I know,
One of the ladies, all the girls at Starbucks in Willis know me. I mean, it's
She's always going there getting tea
it's
all the time.
a joke, I don't even need to order, they just know what I want. But, so one of the ladies yesterday, we got to the window, and she said, hey, what are y'all doing this evening? And we were going to a church service last night. And so we're going to church tonight, and what are y'all going to do at church? Or, something. And she said, it's not Sunday or Wednesday, and I see her all the time.
I know, we
And-
should have said something.
And that would have been a great opportunity to do some of this.
Yeah.
And I had one of your
Should've given her a Bible.
Book of John's little booklets on the dashboard of my Jeep, and I could have just handed it to her, but I didn't. But
We talked about that last week. It's growth when you realize that you missed an opportunity, and we talked about some of those missed opportunities last week. Okay, again, just fill in there for, sake of time. There won't be week 7, so we have to get done today. Fill out, if you would like, just to talk one-on-one about going through this orientation change that you need to have if you're going to go out and make what be part of your life. Maybe you're comfortable where you are. It's effective where you're at right now. That's great. But if you would like to meet or get a small group, if there's several of you, I'd be happy to do a Wednesday night or a lunch meeting or whatever and keep the conversation going. We went to the Cynthia Wood Pavilion, we handed out 640 New Testaments 2 weeks ago, and that was less than 10% of the audience took one. I know I'm good. Our culture out there, they won't even take a Bible in a group setting. I think a lot of them that came in were in groups and that little bit of peer pressure. I'd see them on the street by themselves. I bet some of those would have taken one, but nonetheless, less than 10% taken a Bible. And when I go to Walmart, almost over half of the workers or young people I see in there don't have a Bible and are happy to get one. So there's a need out there, and they're not getting the message on the billboards or otherwise. And they're not coming into the churches to get the message. The church has to go out to them. And, we had a testimony of one gal that, if you recall, the Huntsville gal that was her line. She says, I came down to the park to think about things. I was thinking about going to the church, but the church came to me. That's when we came by and handed her a Bible. It resonated with her because she had actually thought about going to the church, and the church showed up for her. So we want people to be thinking when we're going out, the church came to me. And so that's to me what drives me to keep doing it, is just to see how many people don't know. And then go from there. So I think that could be added to the materials. Because at the end of the day, it is true we're watering and sowing. Got to hand out, the Gideons have to be real comfortable with. I don't get to go through the plan of salvation with 99% of the people I hand the Bible to. But that's watering and sowing. And that's part of the 7, 8, 9, 10 touches that it takes for a lot of people to come to faith in Christ. Is, well, somebody gave me a Bible. This person prayed for me. This person invited me to church. And finally, I came to Christ. So, on the other hand, I read a really good book about sharing to your neighbors and whatnot. And of the people that know you, 60% that don't go to church have said in a survey, well, I would go to church if my neighbor would invite me. They just weren't invited. I don't know if they would actually do it or not, but that's what they said in the survey. So I think we crisp up some of those decision questions, and someone may be closer to saying that prayer of faith. We might be the one that's there to witness it. Maybe we're the 10th person in the chain that needs to encourage them to say the prayer. So any improvements to the class, please note those down. And the 5th question we'll end with: what suggestions do you have to keep prayer for the lost and our personal witness conversations a priority and active at our church? So just popcorn, just throw any ideas out that you have.
Just one of the comments I think we miss in this church, and Dave several years ago had people come up and give a personal testimony. I know I was asked to do that. But we don't do enough of that within our body. I mean, I was really blessed to hear Mike and Debbie tell their story, because people have stuff going on in their lives and they're afraid to share it, or afraid to talk about how they came through it. Yeah. And so the thing I enjoy most about being around other believers is to find out what their testimony is. There's a lot of people in this room who I've asked that question to, and it's really neat to hear their story. Everybody has a different story. So while we're sitting at these tables, we don't sometimes, it's difficult to stand up and tell your story. But, I was telling, last week, Penny was telling her testimony. She didn't know she was telling her testimony, but she was talking about, raised in a Catholic church and how things changed in about 2 minutes. It was her personal testimony. And I'll never forget it, because she shared it. And we don't do enough of that, because other people are going through what we've gone through. Maybe not everybody in the congregation, but we don't do enough of that in front of our own fellow believers, let alone people that, haven't come to Christ.
And I think on top of that it would make other people feel more comfortable to share theirs when they hear someone else's.
I like what you have been doing with any contacts that you've made throughout the week, or how many Bibles have you given out, or whatever. For me, that kind of inspires me. I have yet to give that Bible away, but it has like Sharon and I were talking, it has sparked conversations, be intentional about conversations. And I think, we, small group and ABF, just taking that 5 minutes or whatever it is, to try to ask, oh, the contacts this week, what happened? I think it motivates us.
Very good. Yeah, I think just whatever Bible studies, women's study, men's study, this group, if we dedicate part of our prayer time to share time, keep that sharing going, that would be the one way to keep it rolling. Okay? Then the last thing, and we'll let you go, there's 7 or 8 items listed here as potential outreach interests. You know, just if you think about all the things that we could get involved with in terms of outreach, there's a list of things. You know, but there'd be 4 of you in here that would want to go hand out Bibles at the apartments that are just eye distance of the church. You know, we could probably do a set of apartments in 4 weeks. If we had people that wanted to do that, I'd be happy to lead a group to go do that. Those kinds of things. Those are all possibilities. The other thing is, you know, John came out and helped the Gideons hand out Bibles. If some would like to be a friend of the Gideons, to do local mission work with us, you don't have to be a Gideon. And you got 1 day a month or a quarter, or 1 day a year, you work on something like that. I'd love to have you join our little band of Bible passer-outers. We always need the help. We have some big events coming up this year. We'll have 20,000 attendees coming to in February. A big plastic car event at the fairgrounds. It's going to be a big country music festival at the fairgrounds. Probably more people than that. So there's some big events just right here in our community. Get involved.
It costs money to produce all these documents, and if not, Martha and I do this from time to time, we make donations in memory of somebody that's passed away to the Gideons. And that's one way of at least supporting what the Gideons are doing.
And I also want to mention again that, you know, because I am a Gideon and I support the Gideons, I always recommend our little booklets. There are unlabeled witness testaments that don't have the Gideon spiel in it, little symbol, if you'd rather get those. Most of you order Friends of the Gideons website.
Announce when you're having one of your big events, just to remind us, because we're available to sign up.
Sure. Absolutely. We have, the fall starts getting pretty busy, so we'll have opportunities. I'd love to have anybody come out and help us with that. It's really eye-opening, and it'll kind of show you how many people just in everyday life walking around without any concept of God. I'll finish with the lady that I recall from the Catfish Festival. We handed out, I forget now, Bibles at the Catfish Festival. One sharply dressed lady went by and said, "We give away free Bibles, would you like them?" And she said, "No thanks." And off she went. 10 seconds later she came back and says, "I think I need one of those." So just stuff like that that sticks in your mind. I was right with this because of that one. There were many others. Anyway, let's close with prayer. Leader sheets, if you have something specific to say, if you'd rather keep it personal, but any feedback will certainly help us to do the next time. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be involved in your work. gives us a greater purpose in life. It brings joy in our life. See that someone is being touched by you, that every touch that we have is just guiding them closer to you and say yes. So that's our prayer today, is to pray for the lost. We know it's your will that all who will be saved will be saved. Christ's name we pray.